Está todo perfectito. ¿Sabes cómo voy a hacer?
All right, well, I guess we'll begin with the few people that were ready.
That's only the one right here.
Okay, well, we tried to do this session the other day, but failed to because of this, that, and the other. And so we're going to re-go over this idea of taking our notes and increasing our thoughts and processes on there. You should already have this note process down. Again, if you do not feel like being here, go to your desk and start working. You are not to be at your desk listening. You are to be at your desk working if you are not joining us. And then I will look at your learning notebook and stuff afterwards tomorrow morning to make sure that you watch this video at home and that you are being responsible for your learning. Who's there? Now, I know I'm recording. I'm recording the screen. So I figured without the screen, it would be hard to understand what's going on. So I will be posting both this video that goes over this document. I'm also going to try and do. Oh, I didn't start that. Some other stuff here. We'll see what happens. But anywho, we were talking about our note-taking process and what you should be doing with your notes. And so your writing tip of the day is that we don't just stare at our notes. The pen's moving because you're writing. If you choose to do your work now, fine. Then do work. We don't just have our notes, we reflect on our notes to do better. Okay? And reflecting on those notes means we look for patterns, surprises, something that we compare and contrast, and we create questions that we think are interesting and can challenge us and entertain us into information. Okay? So that's the process we're going to go over. This whole thing right here. It's a long process, and I'm going to show you what that process looked like in my own notes, okay? So let's see if this can work here. Again, if this is too cumbersome, then we won't do it. But maybe it won't be. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to take a look at a section of our read aloud and some notes that I took on that. It's from Victory at Stalingrad. That's right.
Very loud. So like that. EPAVD is new.
I've had it before. I'm using it differently now. Okay, although weak from hunger, hollow-cheeked, and surrounded by ruined buildings, the people of Stalingrad threw a party last night. Why? The Battle of Stalingrad is finally over. I always knew we would win, said Oleg Karpov, who has been defending Stalingrad since July of 1942. Still, it's good to be able to walk down the street without worrying about German snipers. And I'm looking forward to having more to eat. It's as hard to find food here as it was in Leningrad. Is victory at Stalingrad a turning point in the war? One soldier certainly thought so. Looking around at the ruined city, he made a grim promise. In the end, Berlin will look worse. Stalingrad, the cost. About 2 million people have died in the fighting. Almost the whole city is now rubble. Few buildings are still standing. At times during the battle, the Germans controlled 90% of the city, and the Russians held only the west bank of the Volga River. In November 1942, as the weather became cold, the Russians attacked. They surrounded the German Sixth Army. Most Germans surrendered in February 1943. A few carried on fighting. They hid in cellars and sewers. By March, all had been killed or captured. And so if I look at my notes from this section that I had read, again, all I pulled out were kind of some bullet points. This idea of 2 million people dying, that the city was destroyed, that the Germans had controlled 90% of the city at some point. Then the weather got really cold, and then the Russians attacked. And from that attack, by 1943, February 1943, most Germans had given up. They celebrated even though they were exhausted, the Russian people. And then I also noted that this whole idea of German snipers were around and that there was no food available would be a turning point of the war. So far, all I've done is kind of get some information from the text. I haven't really done any thinking at this point. I need to grow my thinking. And I grow my thinking by looking at patterns, by asking questions, by really thinking about what I'm doing, okay, with my notes. So I can't, if you are thinking about what is the session, you are not thinking about what I'm talking about. I am going to project what the session is by the end of the mini lesson. I will say what session we're on again. I'll have the learning point up there, the process we're talking about. Okay, what you could be working on. So all you need to be concerned about, all you need to think about is the learning, what I'm talking about, and that's it, what I'm showing you. That's what you should be thinking about. Okay? Point of the lesson, what am I trying to teach you? Those things, that's what you're experiencing, okay? Wondering if this whole idea, yeah, that's fine. This whole idea about the snipers, and kind of ask this question to myself, like if I were to put myself in that position, if I were to like write about that drama of that situation and think about what's happening. So that's going to be the question I think about, and maybe that I research a little more, like where were some other snipers involved? Is there any personal accounts of people who survived that to get that? So then my question would be something about, like what would it be like to kind of live in a city where there's people trying to kill you? I mean, that's pretty awful. So that would be my thought process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reread this section, and what I want you to do, and let me just get this up here, is this. I want you to think about the same things I've been thinking about. I want you to grow an idea from what I read. And when you've grown that idea and you're ready to write, start writing in your learning notebook for today. Okay, just in your learning notebook. So at any point, maybe you have something you're thinking about now, go ahead and start writing, okay? But as I'm reading, write down a thought that you have. So, no, in your learning notebook. So, although weak from hunger, hollow-cheeked, and surrounded by ruined buildings, the people of Stalingrad threw a party last night. Why? The Battle of Stalingrad is finally over. I always knew we would win, said Oleg Karpov, who has been defending Stalingrad since July 1942. Still, it'll be good to be able to walk down the street without worrying about German snipers. And I'm looking forward to having more to eat. It's as hard to find food here as it was in Leningrad. A turning point? Is victory at Stalingrad a turning point in the war? One soldier certainly thought so. Looking around at the ruined city, he made a grim promise. In the end, Berlin will look worse. Stalingrad, the cost. Both sides have paid a high price in the Battle of Stalingrad. In total, roughly 2 million people have died in the fighting. Almost the whole city is now rubble. Few buildings are still standing. At times during the battle, the Germans controlled 90% of the city, and the Russians held on the west bank of the Volga River. In November 1942, as the weather became cold, the Russians attacked. They surrounded the German Sixth Army. Most Germans surrendered in February 1943. A few carried on fighting. They hid in cellars and sewers. By March, all had been killed or captured. So again, at this point now, if you haven't started writing your ideas down, please start now. You have 1 minute to do so. This is not optional.
One part of your reading said how many people died.
2 million.
We can tell this. I am scared, but I wasn't that time.
Write what your ideas are right now, please.
It was Stalingrad versus Germany.
It was the city of Stalingrad, which is in the Soviet Union, in which the Germans were attacking. So the who I have written down are the Germans and the Soviets. The specific Germans are the Sixth Army. Where? Stalingrad, Soviet Union. Also the Volga River was mentioned. And when, I actually had to cross-reference with this timeline that I'm going to give out, because I didn't know when it started. It started in September of 1942. November 1942 is when it got cold. 1943 is when there was the Russian victory, and by March, everyone had surrendered or were killed. Okay, at this point, since you've developed maybe an idea, I want you to talk to your partner. What is it that you were thinking about? What did you write about? Just real quick. A real quick 30-second share. Turn and talk, please.
I have
Okay, so I wrote that people were happy to know that the battle was over and
I was shooting
your question.
So what I think what is 2,000 people? What I think is million people. The Russians should be like really out of stress and here like walking out the streets.
I wonder why they
Germans
were trying to kill them.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Writing. That's part of what you're doing. You're looking at your notes from reading, and you're coming up with your own thoughts. This writing like a historian is not just giving us information. It's growing ideas. It's asking these hard questions. It's providing what you think the answers are. Make no mistake about that. All right, for the exit slip, this is what I'm curious about. So this is on a piece of paper that you're going to turn in. So this is kind of separate from what we've been talking about. Today, what we were talking about is the process of looking at your notes and thinking about ideas, how to grow those ideas from your notes. Okay. For the exit slip, what I'd like you to do, these are subtopics: D-Day, Pearl Harbor, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. What I want you to do is, what title would you put for these subtopics, and what order would you put the subtopics in? Pearl Harbor, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, or what? What order would you put them in? So those two things. What is your the title you would give this section, and what order would you put the subsections? If you are sitting at your desk, you will need to email me this stuff tonight. The exit slip.
Does somebody have a sticky note to share with me? Does somebody have a resolution?
Does somebody have a sticky note to share us? Ricky, why don't you read it?
It's like you don't need 3. We have to put like in order.
What order would you put them in?
We have to put like first Harbor, then the day.
What order would you put them?
We could do it in the day.
What order would you put the sections in?
I don't know what to do.
I'm seeing if you know. It's a multiple.
Messi. So we just put it on order, or?
Give it a title, and what order would you put those subtopics in? I asked you to put it in chronological, so I did.
Hiroshima was in a
I
position.
didn't read it because
With my head in the way.
I don't know. Hiroshima was a
Excuse me.
I was not, no idea.
This is not up for discussion. You are writing this stuff down and turning it in. Because I want to know what you know
Who?
and what you would do, not what you and your partner would do. All right, at this point, it's been about 15 minutes. You have an incredible amount of work to do. Still finishing your draft, which again, if you're doing that, please be done. It's like you're gonna start messing up. The one thing I really want to talk about too as you go is this reading of your notes and this thinking. This is something that is rigorous that you need to push yourself to do. You need to push yourself. Okay? So you need to be in charge of coming up with questions, of really pushing your thinking when it comes to your notes. Okay? At this point, no. Turn it in, get to work, because you have almost no time. If you don't know what you're doing, please stay seated and I will talk to you.
It is finished if we, but it is finished